Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Jumpstart. Today we are going to be looking at some charcoal and landscape compositional studies. So I think we got about 5 of them lined up today. So this will be fun. And Barbara is able to make it today. Good morning, Barbara. Good seeing you here. And as always, we got Cindy Meyer in control of everything. Thank God, huh? Thank God for Cindy. So we've got quite a few to do today. As a reminder, this will be the last show of this week. The schedule for January is going to be Morning Jumpstart, what you're seeing right now, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. And then we'll have Masterworks on YouTube at 7 instead of 8, at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and those will be on Mondays and Wednesdays. Other evening programs, we have Sketch Club on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday on Facebook, Meyer Studio Facebook page, so if you'd like to join us there. And then if that's not enough and you need a little more, go ahead and join up on our classes. We Zoom every Monday and Friday at 9. And those Zooms are recorded, so if you can't make those live Zoom sessions, you can still participate in the class. All right, who do we have here? So Susan was able to join us. Good morning, Susan. Mr. Tom, Mr. Tom. All right, yeah, and Cindy was able to get some of those times and dates in the chat there, so if you missed those. All right, should we do a little square dancing? Swing your partner around and around. Let's do some do-si-do. Get the iPad up here. And let's look at the reference. Let's start with our reference. Okay, so this is the reference for the still life image of the month. And again, we were talking that if you're brand new and you don't have a lot of experience, then let's simply work on the ginger jar and maybe this bunch of grapes. You can ignore the rest of this. All right? So even if you don't have a lot of experience and this seems, whoa, completely overwhelming, you can pull out just a couple of things and draw that. Then if you do have some experience and you're really trying to get a dynamic composition out of that, then we talked about a vague nothingness coming to the point of the grapes growing out of the nothingness, and this still being a little bit low, and then building in light as we came over here. We talked about these being lined up and how we want to make some more of a curve out of those. All right, we get to our ginger jar and then up to our leaves and down through our detritus. All right, so there's kind of a whoom, sucking you into a single point, and then from there we're going to explode out with this energy through here. Okay, and then at that level, the things you're going to be thinking about are this, excuse me, is the spacing between the build and we coming up, and then we're going to take a little rest here. How long is that rest going to be? How bright or dull is that versus how bright and dull is this? All of those little things like that. The other thing that we're going to talk about today is getting clarity with these things. And it's not necessarily what you think it is, right? So we're going to manipulate what's actually happening here. And in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to come into different places and make sure that there's a little bit of a negative shape. And in particular, that negative shape would be light on the table. Okay, if we had it back here, okay, these little negative shapes are going to create a tremendous amount of clarity. And then we get darker over here, but even with something a little darker, like we can either get it right here between these grapes, or we could move the grape over and get it between the grape and the orange. So let's just see what that did there. So those little, you see that? So those little negative shapes in there can be extremely powerful. Okay, so we know what our idea is, depending on what level you're at. What's next for you? And then we also talked about we have to build these ideas out of our tools. In other words, we don't have anything that can create a grape. We don't have anything that can create a ginger jar, a clementine, a wooden shelf, leaves. All we have is compressed charcoal that can make it dark, vine charcoal that can give us gray. On our toned paper, we'll leave the tone of the paper for that, and then our white will be highlight. So in other words, we're going to create all of this idea that we just talked about with white, tone of the paper, gray, or dark. Okay? All right, let's clean this up a little bit, get that back to something respectable, and let us look at some studies. All right, you guys ready to go? I know that was a little hot and heavy up front, but I don't know. I'm ready to go. I enjoy this stuff. Okay, so here we're doing very good. We've gotten some nice even tones. The shadow, let's see here. And again, I don't have to exaggerate. Let's not completely exaggerate. Maybe not quite black, but that'll be our number 4, or shadow. Grapes, at least in my mind, I treat them just as darks. So they're also this number 4. Okay, and then for number 3, I'm going to go gray. Okay. So you want the gray lighter than your number 4, right? And you also want it darker than the your light, or your number 2, which in this case is going to be the tone of the paper. Oops, I put number 2 on gray, didn't I? We'll have to fix that. So this one's number 2. And the reason I'm doing this is because now I have these spots I can just go grab, change that to number 3. That's some ugly numbers there. All right. And then we're going to jump up to our quote-unquote white, or highlight, or number 1. Okay, so other than transitions, we generally want to be pretty clear on which one we're at. So let's start with our main idea here, or the big kahuna, the ginger jar. And I'm just going to clean up a little bit of this gray. This is going to go around in that shoulder. That light will pass over, if not all the way through, at least some of that shoulder. And we need a little scoop here, and we want to remember we want it to be caught. And then if we're going to have a cast shadow from the leaves, we want to make sure that it's a definite hard edge. Maybe something like that. Okay, and so I get this with the kneaded eraser, right? Mainly just pulling all the gray and stuff back to the tone of the paper. And then we want to make sure, and the other little trick with the ginger jar, we don't want dark on top, we want light on top. That's a little bit thick, but that's as thin as I can get, so keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and just make this whole thing, and then the question is, does our highlight stand on top of that? Will our highlight sit on top of that? So we'll grab our number 1 value, should be our white, and then what we're going to do, if this is really hard, is maybe give this, I can't get, and look, we're not really seeing a difference there, right? That's not popping off the screen to me. So that tells me something is horribly, horribly, horribly wrong, because this is like the big finale. So let's see if we can just take that all the way. Does that change anything? A little bit, but not quite enough. And we're at white. What are we going to do? Well, remember, there's always 2 ends of the stick. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come back to our number 2, and we're just going to make sure that's a little bit darker. And you might say, whoa, that's way too dark. Well, maybe, but it's all relative, and it's lighter than that background's going to be. It's definitely a lot lighter than the shadow. Right? Do you guys think we can get away with that as the brightest? All right, maybe pushing it a little bit. So let's come up a little bit from there. Okay, let's try that. I know that still seems dark, but it's going to work. It's going to work. So that's our number 2. So what we'll do is we'll come back here. And then we're just going to, so this is the tone of the paper, and if the tone of the paper is too light, what you're going to do is take just a little bit of vine charcoal and darken it down just a little bit. Yeah, and then we'd want that to go over like that. So now, why did I want to do that? I wanted to do that, needed to do that because, whoo, that's a little big. I wanted that highlight to be stronger, that we could see that. Again, that's too big. It's just as small as my tools will let me get right now. Okay, so now we need that to have impact, though. So, so one of the things that's happening here is our shadow and our number 4 value, our number 3 value, our dark and our gray aren't very clear. So what I'm going to do here is work to clear some of that up. And I wanted to get that kind of most in there so that we can see. And why I'm doing it a little bit different than you have down here is so that you can see it's about relationships and not about exactly how dark or exact, right? It's the separation of it. So then our shadows, I want to make sure are dark, and we know how to shadow, right? A sphere. we get a crescent moon. We decided we're going to have a cast shadow right here. Okay, and then what's our soft edges? Ooh, a little big. So this has got to be our soft edges here. Whoa, too much. Get that little bit of softer transition in there. Same here, it's a hard edge over there. That's turning down into air, so that'll get a little grayer. It's turning around into air, so that gets a little grayer, a little weaker. And we want to make sure that edge going into the dark is soft, right? This is just a big soft transition here. Just a big soft transition. Kind of like going to a party in your dream rather than going in real life, right? In real life, there's all these, oh, you gotta get ready, you gotta do this, make all these arrangements, yada, yada, yada. But in your dream, man, you're just there. You show up at the party and you're just having a good time, right? There's none of that prep. And so soft edges, you can think of almost dreamy as you just, oh, wow. We just went right through that. I didn't even, how did that happen? And that can be tricky. And that can be tricky, but it makes all the difference in the world. For me, we need a little bit bigger here. Okay. Hello, Claudia. Good you could sneak us in here. Good you could sneak us in. Okay, then we decided number 3 was going to be the background, right? My awkward number 3 up here. And so you can see that could clearly separate from the ginger jar. And we're a little light up here, but you see how all this goes, especially this over here. This light's stealing from our ginger jar. This has got to be a little bit murkier so that our ginger jar can be the hero we need it to be. Right? You got to have a hero. You don't have a hero, we won't mess that up. We're just going to call all of this gray or number 3 right now. Yeah, we do want to gradate this, but again, it's important that we keep these things in order. Like as we go this way, perhaps this gray is getting a little darker. It won't be as dark as the shadow, but we could gradate as we go over. Again, not as dark as the shadow. So this is what I call you want to keep everybody in their lanes. Gray's got to stay in the grain lane. The light, the number 2's got to stay in the number 2 lane. Now within that lane, it can, swerve a little bit, but if you swerve too much, you're going to get pulled over. Highway Patrol is going to want to know if you've been drinking. So the same in your drawing, that if you go too far, you're swerving too much, what happens is the clarity's gone. So if there was a clarity police, they'd be driving up. Okay, does that make sense? Something like that? All right, looks like Reenie's with us too, but unable to sign in. And then in this scenario, again, maybe the table's a little bit darker, but we're going to make the table, meaning the tabletop, still in the gray lane, but a little slightly darker. Right? And we need that there so that our shadows show up. I'll talk about emerging here in just a second. And then the table, as it goes back, what happens to that? It gets slightly lighter as it goes back into space. Okay. So now, especially if we get rid of those numbers, you see we're naturally onto all the action. And that's the purpose of the background and even the tabletop. And then you want most of those edges nice and soft. Okay. So now that this is set up, let's go back and reestablish our shadows. And again, like if you want this to be a little quieter, well, what would happen? Well, you'd make your shadow just slightly weaker, but it's not going to go into the gray lane. So it may be even hard to see that, but that's slightly weaker than the black over there. Let's go a little bit more. Yeah, so it's a bit weaker. So I'm just trying to cheat. I can't get to gray. I can't get to our gray lane, but there we go. And then again, the grapes I'm going to treat as darks. Just darken them all up. A nice hard edge. Oops. Nice hard edge for the bit of the cast shadow. Then on the light, what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. And again, we're just going to get that slightly darker. It's not going to slide down to gray. It's not going to slide down to gray. But do you see that's just slightly darker than that, but still plenty lighter than gray? So it's getting darker, but it's staying in its lane. It's staying as a number 2 value. And soft edges here. And then we can even use edge right as we soften these edges a bit. Look how the whole thing just gets a little bit duller. Now you don't want to just make this a blah, right? Unless that's your intention. I've lost my shadow here a little bit. But now between the ginger jar and the clementine, I mean, you're going to the ginger jar 100% of the time. This is still lighter than this. This is still darker than that. Right? So our lanes are still lined up. Okay, so let's come back to where the shadows are here. And get a nice cast shadow onto the table. And then let's talk about those negative shapes. So then we need to be careful about silhouettes in particular places, because where things stop, we're going to need somewhat of a hard edge here. And notice if I come in here just a little bit and then get a little cleaner on this cast shadow, how much more quote unquote descriptive this is. Remember that negative shape we were talking about? So make it a little darker, richer before the shadow, and a little lighter grayer after the shadow, and then that'll pull you on the other side of the shadow. Okay? So now overall I feel like it's a little hard-edged working like this, but I encourage people to be kind of hard-edged and definite about these shapes until we're clear on how we use them and where they go. And then we can start talking about mood and changing things around a little bit. So let's see here. How are we doing? I kind of got lost in this one, didn't I? That's all right. That's all right. So I want to keep going here for just a second. Let's take this. All right, and then again, our grapes would be dark. Her leaves would be light. And then, you know, these leaves back here. And see, our dark's going to read like a single unit now. Our cast shadow. I should be a little bit darker now. We'd have cast shadows here. I had a cast shadow there. I don't know that I'd line that up like I just did. Okay, so I hope that helps. We want to get a little more clarity out of that. And then what you could do here too with the leaves, if they're going to be the tone of the paper, what you might do is again just add the slightest bit of gray on that, so that in the light they're just not quite as bright. Just not quite as bright as that ginger jar. Right, and then if we continued up here, it might be the same thing. But those shadows, make sure those shadows, if they're going into shadow, will read. And to make this flat, we might see a little edge here and there. And then on the light side, if they're catching light, whoops, that came out way too big. Again, right on the edge, super thin though, super thin. And it doesn't have to be white, white. Look at that. Boom, boom. And we've got grapes. We've got grapes. Okay, I want to move along to some of the other ones, but I hope that helped out. So good morning, Rini. Wendy has made it. Good, 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 good. Okay, but let's get clarity on the role of everything and the objects and where they are in space, what's in front, what's behind. Okay, and then we'll move on to some little mystery. So good job, good job, good job. So let's see a little before and after. Okay, so we're missing a little clarity. We're going to the light of things, which are very good, but we want to spell out our shadows and separate those from our grays a little bit more. And that's going to give us a lot more clarity, right? And then after we get this clarity, we'll move from there to some more give and take. But I'm going to suggest right now, super clear. Even if it's hard-edged and a little bit stiff, be really clear. Okay, so I think white highlight number 1 goes here, here, and here. I think my number 2 value belongs here in this shape, here in that shape, and here in this shape. My number 3 value, boom. And just be clear about that. The work won't look quite as fantastic off the bat, but you and I will save a ton of time, right? Because I can go, oh, okay, I see where the misunderstanding is. Number 3 doesn't really go like that. That number 2 will go like that, and then we're going to run into number 4, right? Because if you're very clear, then we can see where the misunderstanding is. And that's all I mean by that. All right, but fantastic, fantastic. See what else we got. We got a few lined up here. Ah, all right. So fantastic, Barbara. This is wow. So the evenness of your tone is a lot better. you've got your shadow separated from your background, right? And your light. And you've got a little more light around the ginger jar, reflection on the table. Good, 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 good. Yeah, we could push this a little bit this way and that way, but I want you to consider this a huge success, Barbara. I think this is a huge success. All right, so good, 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 good. Now let's talk about a few things that might make this a little stronger. And I think I'm going to focus on grapes, and if there's time, we may talk about background just a little bit. This is happening with a lot of people, so in the general, let's just go over this in the abstract. So if we're thinking in our 4 values, then we want to think about grapes. Again, we'll assume the light's coming from this way. We'll call this our grape. Right, cast shadow. The first thing to do is just a silhouette. Part of the reason grapes are put in there is because they're a little bit different nature than some of the other forms, meaning that they're a dark, but they're also transparent. Okay, so my transparency, I'm not going to add any white, and it's going to be very subtle. And the other thing that's going to happen is if we think of the highlight as here, right? Then what we want this to be, now I don't want that white there, but what we want that to be, the light's coming in this way, is almost a counter force, right? But what you're saying is the light is hitting right here, then piercing through this thing, not bouncing back off, right? Like it would in the ginger jar. And that's why the light side stays dark. And then that light travels through and starts coming out over this end. Okay, but it's real important. I know we're not in color and stuff right now, but that this is more of a warm and not a cool. And for that reason, if you put any of your white chalk or your white in there, it instantly cools it off. And it messes it up just a little bit. So you're better to use your eraser and just pull out a little bit. And again, I know it's sometimes hard working that small, but still, if you're going to put them in there, we're going to learn to suggest them so that they look right. Like even that went a little bit cool. And then that would be one that's really high-end transparency. And I wouldn't necessarily do that to all of them, but then I might have it next to some other ones that were just literally silhouetted. Right, remember, what if I needed a good negative shape? Could set another grape down back there. And then maybe not be so clean on my shape there. And what if we had another one that, again, we weren't so clean in our shape? And right there, my friends, is how you get something to emerge. Right, can you guys see that happening? And again, this would all go a little dark and more mysterious here. like that, then those grapes would just kind of emerge out of there, and then they would quote unquote climax or hit a high point at that grape, and then I would start falling off again, and then maybe there's, boom, the ginger jar or something else. But what are we doing? We're starting with less, 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 and growing to more, 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 and this is the most, and then we're coming down again, and then we're going back up with the, as far as clarity goes. And that's how we orchestrate these darks and these grays. Okay, does that make sense? Oops, did not level up, so I just got to take this all away. Second, don't get off that first level. It's a killer. You can't keep anything. You can't keep anything. All right, so one tap at a time. We'll take this away, and then let's look at what if we did that to the painting. Oh, whew, finally. All right. Here we go. How's everybody doing? Karen D made it. Hey, Karen. I think you put your finger on it. It's just enjoying the process is half the battle. When most of us start, it's just about finishing a piece and get something we can impress our friends with. But yeah, and that was thanks. I keep enjoying the process. Good. That's so important. It's so important. Because we do want to learn and improve, but at the same time, this is our life. We want to enjoy it. And this isn't going to be a quick fix. You don't get good at this overnight. So get into a good relationship with this. That is great. Barbara is a great example of just enjoying the process. And fantastic. So let's, since I've got a few more to do, I'm going to quickly just do some drawing here. And let's see, we can see the before and the afters. And not to go too far from where you are, let's see if can't use what you have here. All right, so I'm going to leave a little light on the shoulder. I'm starting with my shadow. And if some of this cast shadow was a little cleaner, I think that might help. But again, it's so much of it's just a matter of taste. Okay. But when you lay those things down like that, what you're talking about is more the depth that you're seeing than the actual shadow. And so those thinner, longer lines might help give a little more depth in there. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we're going to silhouette our grape. Okay, and then the highlights coming from where? Highlights coming this way, so might hit there, and then that warm get a little bit darker, warmer, would go there. Right? Because if the light is hitting, oops. If the light's hitting here, it'll pass through and come out there. Okay, so that's what, when you do your highlight and your reflected light, just keep that in mind. And then like if with dark silhouette here, one of the things that's going to do is really set up that little slice there and bring attention to that, because the contrast will be so much better. Do you see how just making those dark silhouettes of the grapes, it really changes the nature? Right? It's something different and it allows a little bit of a grab without fighting for the stage with the ginger jar. Okay, so I think the same thing over here, if those went darker, because those highlights just have such power. Excellent, excellent. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. All right, so that's what I would suggest mostly on this, Barbara. And then the other thing, you want to be careful about this, but like back here, I would show all of this in the shadow, at least some of the twig. And then on these real small things, instead of doing a light and a shadow side all the time, what I do is sometimes I'll like put the whole thing in shadow, but then in certain areas just cover that with the light. And so, and that's what you'll see in these little bitty things anyway. Usually you kind of see a dark and a light, or a dark or a light. And so if you just vary that, that would help a little bit. And then the other thing is, you've got it here, but if you need it just a little darker on an edge here and there, like this edge here, this is turning away from our light. So that would have to be a shadow. All right, and like some of this, maybe a little bit of this could, but as we turn under, it probably wouldn't be a... And you, just like the grapes, you don't necessarily have to show all of these. But if you just need a little more weight on those, see how that little bit of dark really adds quite a bit there? Okay, and then the last thing I'll say, Barbara, because this is looking so fantastic. And again, this is this is one I'm seeing most students do, is we got, man, somebody's trying to stop us. Somebody's trying to stop us. So again, if you just built this down a little bit, maybe brought this one over and even that one out a little bit. If you brought that one out too, what that would allow for, oops, it's a little bit more of that negative shape if we needed or wanted it, right? But it'll also be more of a curve than a straight up and down. Okay, so that's one little thing to think about. But I think those darks alone and kind of a couple of those silhouettes would change this up. And just to show you guys, this is what's pleasing, is something running through. So now look, if I introduce that same dark, and if I give it a shape almost pointing you over to so what I've done here is I've given another change, right? Remember, where there's no change, there's no experience. And so this is just going to make for a bigger experience. Now again, we got to watch these edges. This doesn't get too heavy. Want to make sure that's kind of pointing out there towards those. But after you take the stiffness out of that, oh. All right, and again, this is a little bit of a big change. I'd probably make that even slower. And then it's a little bit heavy. What happens instead of light right there, if it just slightly darkens off. Right, what happens is that the objects then become more intense because they're like the only ones holding the light. See that? And now there's a question. This is, some people feel like this is too closed in. Other people like the openness. But I just want to show you options. All right. Good job, Barbara. Good job, good job, good job. Let's see what else we got here. How are we doing on time? Woo, I'm a talker, huh? All right, we've made it to some landscapes. So let's look at our reference. And this is a morning sunrise. And I always start with the reference in black and white because value, 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 value. Right? It's all about the value. And then you can use color to complement the value, right? To reinforce that, but value, value, value is where it's at. And we talked about, let's see here. We talked about how you could have several paintings out of this, right? Several different compositions. Like one, maybe we cut this painting here. So I'm just taking all of this out so we can't see it. So we see what's left. Right, then that's, because what we want to do, and we got to watch it here, that this and this aren't the same size. All right, so the idea then would be to, all right, is this about that? Or is it about, one's got to win and then the other one's going to kind of reinforce and make the other one better? And you can go either way. You can go either way. And what else did we say we could do? Well, we could literally take the ocean out and just make this a sky painting. Again, so what I would do is cut the canvas there, this black. I wouldn't paint the bottom black. That's just like, let's crop it. Right, so you have a little bit of land and maybe fog, mountains at the very bottom. And then you'd have this big sky painting. So again, you don't have to take the reference straight where it is. We do not copy, we do not copy, we do not copy. But we compose, we create, we design. We take what's in front of us and we see what we can do with it. Okay? So a couple of things that I pointed out. Is our dark then, we can see this is dark, right? This is dark, and this is dark. Of course, that's a little dark. So we've got some darks here we can use to design. Then, just for different color, all of this is pretty gray. I know we've got this here, but we can use that or not use it. Gray, you see this is gray. Look at these sides gray. And then this is a darker gray, but a little bit of darker gray before we get to our dark over here could really help us out. And then we're going to go more colorful. But a little darker and richer here. And then definitely lighter, wherever it is. This is obviously a huge exaggeration, right? And we have some lighter color in the sky along with the white of the clouds. Okay, so dark, gray, or number 4 would be dark, number 3 would be gray. And then we could take that gray and make it rich. Rich and a little bit lighter there for the ocean color. And then as we come up to color and light. So what does that mean that this has to be? Well, in order for our color and light to read, it's gonna have to sit on a little bit of gray, doesn't it? At least. All right, so 2 pennies to anybody that was able to follow all that. Look at that mess. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Let's look at some drawings. Let's look at some drawings. All right, so hopefully Miss Reenie's still here. She probably got mad she had to get up early, and then I don't get to her for 45 minutes. All right, so nice, Reenie, nice. You got some good things going here. We've got some good things going. I like your proportions of the canvas. And again, this is a little weak, but let's just talk about, a little dark. So yeah, I like that, darks. Yeah, and just rocks, and if you didn't want to do this, the fisherman or whatever. Little dark, little dark. Careful about the steepness of this. And you can do that just, boom, you can have a little drop, right? Just by a little variety there. But we don't want to get this thing going down too fast. So that would be the one thing. But I like the size of this to the size of these back here. Very, very good. Very good. And then like we were saying, the water here will be a little bit darker, but more colorful, right? A rich color. And then kind of your lighter colors and more of your white is going to be back there. We want to separate that sky from the water, right? So if we think lighter value, maybe those cooler colors with a little bit of white in the sky, and then those darker, a little darker, wherever it is, and these aren't going to be easy colors to find, but something like that before it grays off. And then that just might hold a couple reflections or something. But if we do this, that's going to be too much. Okay, that part of the secret to this is, and I know this is charcoal right now, but we're preparing for this painting. So if you go ahead and get this in your mind that this has got to be a little darker, grayer base, right? It could be a little warmer than that if we wanted. But it's not going to be that bright orange that you think you see. What you see there is just a couple little twinkles across the ocean there. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then with your sky. So let's come back and talk charcoal. Oh, did I mess that all? I did. So let's just start again, huh? So there's a little dark, that dark way back there is almost the darkest in the whole thing. And I'm sure that wasn't on purpose, but we just want to be careful with that. We want to be careful. There we go. All right. So dark, 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 let go there. I like how you let go up here. I think that's great. We grab them right here. We let go. You might, what you had probably is even better than what I had, huh? Am I messing up your drawing here, Reenie? We go here, and then, yeah, maybe start grabbing that dark up there. Maybe a little bit here. But, yeah, let us go. Good job. And I notice you're going to do a little bit of the pier here. So that will take up, again, you don't want to be fence builder, but you want to let them know enough that they can tell it's a pier. Okay, so not even all the way through, but just suggest a little bit. And again, as we get back, the dark will get a little bit weaker. We talked about the shape. A little bit weaker back here. Good, good, good. Then we're coming up to our gray. And I don't know that I would put white right at the top. I'm real tempted to kind of make this be a cloud here at the top. And the reason why is that'll just hold everything in and kind of make it even seem brighter. Yeah, we got all the gray down here. Good, good, good. And this might be a little bit darker, a little bit richer gray, but still going to be a gray through there. Nice. And then we talked about, right, not a lot lighter than that. Right? And that kind of darker, richer stuff that, and we've got to go near to far here, but I just want to say, right, can you see how this is basically the same value as that gray, but I've added a lot of color. Right, it's got a lot richer color. And then your sky, again, I'm not portraying to accurate. Right, so you might have a little bit of that at the top. Right, that sun might not be, oops, white, 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 because we're looking through a bunch of atmosphere. And it might be a little bit dirty there at the horizon. Okay, so I think you got the right idea, Rini. Just kind of get in mind those values. So if we were to take the color out, and I wanted to show you this color because when I do it just in gray, it doesn't really look right. But now that you know what it's going to look like once we go into color, right? Your black and white study, right? This is all going to be more this value than the value of the paper. And what happens is, with there being no paper showing up front, in other words, no number 2 value, except perhaps a couple of those reflections on the water like we were talking about. Right, and then that way the ocean is going to separate from the sky. And then we could have kind of a number 2 value along with then the white of the clouds. And then those clouds, again, if they've got light, guess what? They've also got some shadow. Okay, so I hope that helps out on that. So again, good job. You got the idea, Rini. You got the idea. Boom. All right, that is 1, 2, 3 works, and we've gone through 2 references, and we have 2 more we're going to go through. Let me hit Jan, and then let's hit Janny, just because they're different. So I got this, and I don't know why, but I was a little bit surprised. This has got a very Emil Carlson feeling, that soft kind of tonalist stuff. And I think you're onto a beautiful idea, Jan. A beautiful, beautiful idea. And again, it's just a matter of opinion how much you want to do. But just like in the last one, I think what this down here is going to be a little bit darker because it's reflecting. And now it'll have color, so it'll be richer. But value-wise, we don't want it to get this light, you know, anywhere in the front. And that'll pull us across this land and ocean back to the sky. And again, it's always about an aesthetic balance. But even if you wanted to run this off the edge, I don't know that I would do it quite with such a big piece of light, right? If you want that to be that dynamic, I think this is going to have to be a little thinner up at the top here. And this is supposed to be gray. I know it came out a little warm. Right? Because look, as we kill that paper, that number 2 value at the top, and kind of hold this in, that whole thing just glows. It just really glows. And I think that's fantastic. I really do. And then something else you might do, again, just very quietly, these edges, just take a little bit away from them, and that'll hold us inside. Whoops, what's going on there? Woo! Right, this one you've already done on that side, yeah. But even on that, so just hold it in a little bit. But I love like the weight of that versus the weight of that versus the weight of, you know, even with this abstractness, you've managed your weights very well. It's working great. It's working great. And then again, depending, there would be reasons to do both, but be careful that this isn't too slippery. Meaning, how I was taught about that is if you think of this as a shape and then the sky as a different shape, with those sides meeting, they're just going to be able to slide right through each other. And what you can do to prevent that is, instead, like a little tree or a building creates like a lock. You see that creates a keyhole that now this won't be able to move that way and that won't, because they're locked. They're locked up. And it can be so quiet and subtle. I've seen Clyde Aspaveg do the smallest little things. Or, which is the same, again, just the other end of the stick, the background can cut in, right? Same thing. You just want to notch it a little bit so they can't slide. Now I'm getting squares and stuff, and you've got such nice. But I think even the littlest bit of that on each side would be tremendous. Okay? But again, you know, you might have a vision here, but I would think down this road, those couple of things might make this a bit stronger. Might make it a bit stronger. All right. Fantastic, Jan. I really like this. I really like this. Good job. Good job, good job, good job. I miss seeing Jan in class. She's just such a beautiful, nice lady. So quiet. But in person, every now and then she slips in a zinger when you're not thinking about it. I'd be laughing at days from the things she'd say. So I hope we can see you in person again soon, Jan. Hope we can see you in person again soon. Okay, and I think we're going to end on this one. Let me check here. I believe I had 5 today. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th one. All right, so this is the last one. Janny, and you've got a beautiful little scene here, Janny. You can kind of tell Janny's an outdoors person. You just pick that up. So what would I say to this? I don't know. Okay, so I guess I'm just going to have to be a little bit persnickety because there's nothing really big. Okay, well, there's one thing a little bit big, and we've already kind of talked about this. But again, understand a lot of people have trouble in black and white because this is going to be colorful. But again, for right now, I want to drop the water value below the sky value. Okay, that's going to be real important to the success of this painting. I love your guy fishing out there. He's not rowing anywhere. He took his fishing pole and he's done. Let's go. Not messing around, rowing out to a boat and taking a boat. No. Give me my pole. I'll see you in a few hours. Okay, and see, to me that still seems too light. And there's ways we can make that fisherman stand out a little bit. We can give a little bit of those color reflections on there to help him out. We can go a little darker with him. But the whole thing is, this area needs to be quote unquote darker than the sky area. Now, how much? That's up to you. I'm going to suggest you get it a good deal darker, or definitely darker. Then again, use your color and then a little bit those reflections, that strong color, to separate it. What do you think? What do you think? Something like that? Now, of course, once I've done that, I've knocked out the feeling of the darks, right? So now this is the same color as the mountains. We don't want that. So we'll have to make sure that these darks stay as darks. Again, I don't know how small I can get. I'm gonna mess up your little man here. Out there fishing. And then as we go back, all right, that can be a little less. But again, we want this definitely darker than that water. All right, then we can walk back, get the fog. So maybe slightly more on that. Okay, and then that fog in the foreground there. Again, I think I might be a bit quieter. Right, because the light's not directly hitting that. Right, and that might even be a little, and we can give a little bit of light and shadow to that as well. Again, so you can almost think of like everything under this line as being darker than basically everything above that line. Okay, now we want to keep that quiet, but that's how you can think about it. All right, you got your shadow side and your light side of your clouds right here. Again, that little bit of we're seeing that sun through so much, right? So if it's like an orange or a yellow or something, but not quite so bright, right? And then the other thing is this sky down here, again, is a little dirty with dust and stuff. So it's not going to be as bright. These little measures matter. So a little dirty down here, horizon. Right, might be a little bit more, but. And why is this? Well, these clouds, those clouds are further away from us than the clouds towards the top. So if they're further away, what that means is we're looking through more atmosphere. So basically what I'm going to do is just not let those be as bright as the ones up front. And so just that little bit of growth there could help tremendously. And again, I know we're in black and white here, but just to show you what's coming, because this is supposed to be prepping us, right? Prepping us for our paintings. And then that cool sky up there with that white. Something like that. And that sky's got to be lighter than that. What am I thinking? Okay, so something like that. And do you see the lake relationship? Because again, the sun hasn't, it's just now, it's not lighting up any of the land. The only thing that's lighting up is this soft ambient lighting coming from all of this. So, right, this is still basically all in shadows, just got quiet ambient light going on. But we would be seeing just a little bit of reflection in the water. Okay, I hope that helped. I really am kind of digging your layout here. I'm digging your layout, so I don't know if I would change any of that really. You want to kind of watch, we're going, Fence Builder's gone wild here. But right, so very common. Just make one bigger, one smaller. Right, I might make this one a little bit smaller just to hold that light in and push it that way, rather than holding it from getting that way and pushing it that way. I think I would go towards the center. And so yeah, by making that maybe a little bit bigger and then that one a little bit smaller. All right, does anybody have any last minute questions? An hour 15, 5 paintings, 2 references. Not too bad. But more importantly, I hope that you got good quality information, good ideas. All right, we're here to encourage, support, inspire, motivate, and we got to educate. But do we want educate? I don't know. That seems like a telling. Maybe I'm just interpreting it wrong. But that will wrap it up for this morning. This is the last morning jump start this week. We'll be back next Tuesday. Our morning jump start schedule for January is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. right here on YouTube, the Meyer Studio channel. And our evening shows, we have Sketch Club at 7 tonight. And Sketch Club on Facebook, not YouTube, happens Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And then on the Monday and Wednesday, we don't have Sketch Club. We do Masterworks here on YouTube. So hopefully one of those things will inspire you. And if that's not enough, join us in our Zoom class, our online classes. We'd love to have you. And it's great seeing all your guys' work. All right. Yeah, they're doing great work. They're doing great work. So with that, I bid you adieu. I've got my own work to do. So hopefully that lit a fire and we can get some things done. Stay beautiful. Be creative. Create. And we'll see you next time around. Bye, everybody.